Hey, everybody. Welcome to our virtual pumpkin carving class today. I'm Tim Durkovic. I'm president of the Durkovic Group, and hopefully that you're going to have some fun tonight. We thought that before we actually get into the carving, it's cocktail hour for those of us who are of the drinking age. And so I figured I'd bring my good buddy Claude Beltran from Bacchus Kitchen in, help us mix a cocktail that we can all make and enjoy drinking it while we're watching the pumpkin demonstration. So let me bring Claude into the room. There he is. And I'm going to let him take it away and tell us a little bit about what it is you're making us to drink. Hang on, you're muted. Let me unmute you. Now you can go. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm a little concerned, Tim, that every time you bring up drinking, my name comes up. I'm not sure what that's all about, but my reputation.
I was just saying, I'm a little concerned that everything that we do revolves around booze anyway. So it's like,
well, booze and food, that's my life. That's what I do. I can't talk to you about anything else but that.
So tell us what you're making for us this evening.
We're going to make a blue zombie, or the blue ghost, or what we can call it, whatever we want. So we're going to start out. We got two different kinds. Did everybody, I think, got the recipe? I hope.
Everybody, there was a list of all the ingredients on our website. I'm going to post them up here too, just in case people need to see them. That's what we need. And if I get attention,
I'm going to do mine in a mason jar. So I'm going to add my first tequila. Then I'm going to add my second tequila.
Hey, wait a minute here. So the recipe that we had called for rum, and you're using tequila.
Rum. I'm sorry. I meant rum.
Okay.
I can prove it to you. I have the rum bottle. It is rum.
So it says light rum and coconut rum. What's the difference between the two?
The coconut rum is flavored, and it adds a definite little kind of a pina colada kind of flavor to it once you add the.
Is that like a Malibu rum, if you will?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was the one that I found. Of course, your secret ingredient, blue curacao. And we're going to mix this up. Now, I highly recommend that when you mix it up, you definitely have to use a very large knife. It's very, very important, especially Halloween time. I think the more you stir it, or you could use a cocktail shaker. All right.
I love the Psycho reference. That's awesome.
All right. And I'm going to strain it into my glass. You can use the knife to keep the ice out. You don't want to dilute your alcohol, that's for sure. All right. And then we'll grab our pineapple juice. Hold it up here. And it does take a little bit to separate. All right. And of course, make sure to taste it, make sure it's good.
So it's not meant to be served on the rocks. It's meant to be served straight up like that.
I like it straight up. Yeah. Maybe shaking it more and put it in a martini glass. Although this is kind of a cool glass. It looks very Gothic looking and interesting. And of course, it would not be complete on Halloween without garnishing your drink with a spider. Okay. I think that's very, very important. There we go. I would drop it in there.
Does it actually separate at one point?
It does. It takes a little bit. I made it a couple times yesterday, and it does separate. It just takes a little bit of time since I've got it all shaken up. And it's just fun to drink with a spider in your drink. So
and when it separates, it's like a blue layer and a yellow layer. What's it look like?
Yeah.
Blue, yellow.
All right. I'm working tonight, so I can't finish this, unfortunately. I wish I could, but...
Well, hopefully everybody's made it. Here is the list of ingredients again, just in case. So it's 1 ounce of light rum, 2 ounces of coconut, 1 ounce of curacao, ice, pineapple juice, pineapple wedge, shake away, and enjoy. So hopefully everybody has it made. Thank you for popping into the stream and showing us how to make the drink. We'll see you at our next event, I hope.
All right. Happy Halloween.
Thank you. You too.
All right, guys.
Take care.
Peace.
Bye-bye. So I'm going to bring in our pumpkin carver now, Mr. Mark Solomon, who's going to talk us through a demonstration of how to carve pumpkins. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
There you are.
There you are.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. Before you start the carving thing, I was wondering whether you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into pumpkin carving, and then I'll just let you take it away.
Okay, about 25 years ago or so, my wife bought one of those pumpkin master kits you see at the pharmacies or at Kmart. They still have Kmart. And and it came with a set of tools and some patterns. And actually, this is a pumpkin masters pattern I'm going to be working on tonight. And I tried it. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world to do. And every year she challenged me to get better at it. And then people started noticing, and the next thing I knew, I was being hired to carve pumpkins at zoos and parks. And last year I got to carve on the USS Intrepid, on the hangar deck of the USS Intrepid, an aircraft carrier.
That's incredible. That must have been quite an experience.
It was. My whole family came with me, and we had a blast.
So it kind of was a hidden talent, if you will, that you discovered by accident, I guess.
Yeah, I never set out to be a pumpkin carver. It just sort of happened.
Well, thanks for the little bit of the background. Why don't we let you take the show away? And just so everybody knows, there was a list of sort of a kit in places where you could get things for this. If you go to our website, which is thedurkovicgroup.com/events, all that information is there. If you're following along after the fact from today and you want resources, that's where you can go do it. So Mark, take it away. And if anybody has any questions along the way, just post them in the comments and I'll interrupt his carving and get the answers to your questions.
Okay. Well, the first thing you got to do to carve a good pumpkin is have a good pumpkin. And so I'm really, really particular about having a nice smooth skin to carve on, that it should stand usually by itself. And so those are important features for me. I'm going to turn this camera around for a second, and you can see I have just a few pumpkins here in my garage, all hand selected by me and my team. And once you get your pumpkin and you get it cleaned off, because I do a lot of my pumpkin sourcing from pumpkin farms, and so they get dirty. It's been raining, it's disgusting, and so I've been through the mud and whatnot to get my pumpkins. After that, you need to open it up. Most people open it up from the top. This one is actually opened up from the bottom. I'll light it up later on and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's easier for me to put the bulbs in from the bottom. I light mine with bulbs. If you were going to light yours with a candle and you carve it and clean it from the bottom, you need to put a chimney up the top so that the candle smoke has a place to get out.
That makes sense.
But, with today's LED bulbs, they don't generate much heat, which is nice. They don't dry out the pumpkin. The pumpkin will last a little longer. Biggest question I get is, how do you get a pumpkin to last until Halloween or a couple days later? And I was visiting some pumpkins I carved earlier this month. They were at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago, and some of them were getting a little moldy, but most of them still look good after 2-3 weeks. So next, you've got to open up the pumpkin, as I said. You saw me doing, I use this is a drywall blade, a drywall saw. It's very good for the large pumpkins. If you're doing a normal sized pumpkin, something this size or smaller, a kitchen knife will do. One of them is to angle in, especially if you're cutting the top, because if you cut straight up and down, they'll fall through. and so you won't be able to put a lid on your pumpkin. So cut it at an angle so that it's smaller at the bottom than it is at the top, and so the lid will stay on.
Funny, the little things you never think about. Like I never would have thought about the top of the pumpkin falling in.
Oh, the other thing you might want to think about, we put a key, a little square coming off the side of the top when we're cutting around, so that when you go to put the cover back on, you know which way to put it on.
That's another good idea.
Otherwise, you sit there and you sit there and you turn and you turn. It don't look right.
Yeah.
Put the little key in, you'll know exactly where to go. There's just a little tooth sticking out.
Clever.
So you mark that tooth, you line that tooth up with the hole the tooth made, and it goes back in. So the pattern I'm working on today is a bat and a pumpkin. It's a very simple pattern. So start you off easy. And we need to get that pattern onto that pumpkin. So to begin with, I'm going to tape the pattern on. Standard cellophane tape. And I usually do the four corner, the four ordinal points, top, bottom, left, and right. And you'll notice that when I'm done with that, the pumpkin is not flat. And so you get these little ears sticking up. And so what we want to do, here's the scissors, very important. Cutting the corners, and I'm going to try to line it up with someplace where it's not going to interfere with the pattern. And I'm going to, let me do this in each of the four corners. Put someone near the corner. And you can see I get it. Now it didn't quite line up here. That's all right. We can fudge it when we do the poking. Okay, so the pattern's on the pumpkin. Let's say I did all four corners. We now need to poke holes into the pattern so that, now you'll notice your kit came probably with a little hole poker like this. There's some other ones. This one looks more like a sword. I don't like the sword.
Why don't you like the sword?
It doesn't do round holes.
Okay, good reason.
The nice thing about the sword is that you can get it to point in the direction you take the flat of the sword and you line it up with the lines, and it goes around and follows that. Some people prefer it. I don't. There's another device that looks like a poker. It isn't. This is a drill. We'll talk about drills later on. And then there's other versions of the poker that I really like. This one is a little wheel with sharp points on it, and you can roll the wheel along the line and it will tuck through. This particular one, I don't think the points are long enough. So some of them come with bigger points. But this one here looks like a fan, and it rolls like that. And that's probably my favorite. So to show you, to begin with, I line it up and I roll it around, and it leaves nice, evenly spaced holes. You can go back into those holes and go from there and slowly work your way around the pattern. And this will transfer holes wherever you need to go. Now, watch.
I understand what you're cutting out is what's black on that pattern, right?
That's what's going to be cut out.
Okay.
Okay, so when I'm done, you'll have the pumpkin parts that will be left will be the bat and the pumpkin.
Got it.
So, good question. You always have to wonder about that.
Yeah.
The patterns that I do are either two color, where I cut out or I don't cut out, or in this one it's the same pattern, but I have three colors. I have white, black, and gray. And that I'm just going to scrape out the gray. I've got a sample of that. No, I don't actually. I got rid of that sample.
So it gives like a three-dimensional relief kind of on that one.
Exactly.
Okay.
So skip ahead. Let's say that I did all the poking and we end up with this pumpkin here where I poked all the holes, and we can see that it's now ready for carving as soon as we take the pattern off. Cellophane tape pretty much comes off by itself. And you can see
you're poking the holes. You're basically tracing the pattern with the hole poker is what you're doing.
Exactly. You can see now, if when you're done, if you can't see the holes, take a little bit of flour and spread it on the pumpkin and wipe it off. And the flour will stick to all the holes.
That makes sense. That's a great tip.
You white little dots. I actually use tracing paper on the back of mine so that the holes will show up better for you guys. And so instead of little yellow holes there, I've got little black holes. And so it's easier. Okay. We've got the pattern transferred. The next step is carving. I tend to use the Pumpkin Master knives that come with your kit. They're nice little knives, but this is what happens to them. You see this knife is no longer sticking straight out.
Yep.
After a while, that's going to break off. I've got knives from about 20 different kits here. And sometimes I just buy extra knives. They're going to die on you. Have an extra. Usually each kit comes with a small knife and a big knife. When you cleaned out your pumpkin, I didn't talk about cleaning out the pumpkin.
No, you didn't.
When you clean out the pumpkin, you want to take one of the smaller knives and stick it into some spot that's not going to be really seen. And when you reach inside the pumpkin, you should see about a quarter of an inch of the knife sticking through. If you don't have enough of the pumpkin cleaned out. So you want to go in there with the scraper and get more of the edge of the pumpkin. Now, we're only carving this side. You only need to clean this side. Oh, crud, I just realized something. I was going to show you how to cut, but this pumpkin's still solid. Well, we'll still talk about it. I've been demoing
So his camera's locked up on us just a little bit. So let's give it a couple minutes here. Let me see if I can get him back in.
There I am.
There you are. You locked up on us for a second, so I just refreshed.
Okay, I was wondering. I was just talking about the fact that I forgot to clean this pumpkin out.
Oh, that's a problem.
Yes, it is. That's all right. I've got one here that is all cleaned out. I could actually carve, but I didn't want to go back and finish the poking on that one. So we'll just discuss about how to do the carving. Let's go back to the pattern here. don't start on the big pieces. Start with the little pieces. Start in the center of the pattern. Every time you cut a hole through the wall of the pumpkin, you're going to weaken the pumpkin in that area. And so if you do the big pieces, when you go to do the small pieces, the pressure of you cutting through is going to break through from where you're cutting to the rest of the pumpkin to the other cut areas. And so you're going to break the pumpkin. So always start with the smallest pieces. Always start in the center and work your way out. So for this one, I'd start with the eyes of the bat and the eyes of the pumpkin. Do the mouths. Find the smallest piece. That's this one here. Do the next smallest piece. The next smallest piece. This is actually one huge piece here, and that big piece up on top. And so I would probably do him before I do that, just because it would less likely break the pumpkin when I'm carving. Let's see what happens if I do carve. As I said, this guy's not cleaned out. One of the things you want to do is let the blade do the work. Okay? Don't push on the blade other than to push it in. But once it's in, you're pulling and pushing, but you're not applying pressure. Let the blade do that itself. Make sure you're always cutting the way the hole goes. And voila, another piece out. The eyes of the pumpkin next.
So if you got the right tools, it actually goes pretty quick, it looks like.
Yeah, as I said, the standard Pumpkin Master tools, if I spend more than $5 for a tool, I think I've been ripped off.
Uh-huh.
I have a couple power tools. I usually find them too powerful to use. I'd rather use a hand tool just because it gives me the control that I want in carving.
Right. Every time I've tried to carve a pumpkin, I think the tools that I've been using are way too big. I'm struck by how little these tools are. And just a reminder to everybody that on our website, there's a link to where you can get these kits. So if you go to this link on our site, there's a link to where you can get the kits that he's using.
Yeah, the big knives, you're going to fight with them. Most of them, this has got a serrated edge. You notice it's not very sharp, but please don't cut yourself with it. And it does the job. It's very, and let that serrated edge cut for you. Don't push along the cut. Let the blade do the work for you. I think that's probably the biggest thing to learn, is to allow it to do the work and not you. This is what happens when you push it too hard. The blade bends, and after a while it will break, and that's when you have problems.
So for these carving kits, if the pumpkins are a lot bigger than what you're working on now, do the kits come in different sizes? Are the blades bigger for the bigger pumpkins? Are the skins thicker and harder to get through?
The skins are thicker, but as I said earlier, you want to thin them out so that with the smaller blade, only about 1/8 of an inch sticks through. When I push this blade through, if I was to be able to reach my hand up in here, only this amount of the blade should be going through. If less than that is going through, you haven't cleaned it enough.
So basically, you're taking the top off and then scraping the insides out and scraping the skin thinner and thinner and thinner.
Exactly.
Okay.
You don't want to go too far. If you have much more than that sticking through, you have the possibility, and I did this once. We had this great big pumpkin, and we cleaned it out really, really good. And I got 3 cuts into it, and my hand just went straight into the pumpkin.
Yeah.
So you want that much of the pumpkin wall still there. If you don't have that much, then this blade isn't going to get through to the other side. And if you have more than that, I mean, this blade will not get through to the other side, and you won't get a clean cut. If you have too little, you have a possibility. If too much of the blade is sticking through, you have a possibility of punching through the wall of the pumpkin. So you don't want to do that. So
That makes sense.
You want to thin it out enough, but you need to be checking periodically to see if the blade is sticking through. You also want to make sure that it's the same thickness on the top and the bottom, the left and the right. So you might need to stick it through in different places. Find places where your pattern is going to be when you do this. So I would check here because I know I'm going to be cutting around there.
That makes sense.
Okay. And I could do it here, and you could tell in all 4 locations whether you've got enough of the pumpkin cleaned off without going too far. You'd rather be on the heavy side. You can go in after your first cut, if it didn't go all the way through, and thin it out more. You can't put the pumpkin back.
True.
So,
Better to be cautious, I guess, huh?
Exactly. So, and I can keep on carving that, but to tell you the truth, I don't think anyone really wants to sit there and watch me carve through. We'll pull this off, and I'll do my big reveal here. Oh, I just ripped that off because I have other copies of this printed. When you only have 1 copy, peel it off gently from the pumpkin because you're going to be looking back, especially with the more complicated patterns. You're going to be looking back to see which parts of this am I supposed to carve, which parts am I supposed to leave back. The gray, the black, you're supposed to carve. The white, you don't want to touch. So, very important to keep on reminding yourself that. I did a pattern earlier today where it had the word Halloween, and I was supposed to leave the letters behind and carve around them. And I was terrified I was not going to do that. I did, but so here's the big reveal. That's what the pumpkin looks like when you're done. Of course, you really can't see that too well. It's not lit up. I don't know. Anyone can see what that is?
Yeah, that looks really cool. So, quick question we have from one of our viewers is,
Okay.
it's about 1/8 of an inch of the knife that goes through on the inside, right? That's kind of what you're looking for.
You want about 1/8 of an inch of the knife to make it through. Now we're using. Oh, there it is. We're using one of these to light it up. You'll see these in a lot of Christmas stores. I call them Menorah Lights because Jews put them in menorahs. But and this particular one has its own switch to it. And so stick it in the back underneath. And you should be able to see that a little better. We can do slightly better than that. Okay, so can everyone see that?
That's super cool how that works.
So now I made a couple of minor changes. If you notice these little pieces here that shape the pumpkin and the wings of the bat a little better. I don't know, can you see that? Let me see if I can bring this in.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
You can
Those
see
that
more of the
scrape
detail.
off a little section of the skin to give it that appearance. It shines through, but it doesn't have the bright yellow light. And so
So another question that we're getting from somebody is, do you have any tips to how to preserve the pumpkins, because they seem to go bad so quickly? And somebody else commented back that they've heard that Vaseline on the cut edges seems to work. Have you heard that?
Yes, I have. In fact, I heard it again today. Vaseline does do that. What it does is it seals the pumpkin. You got to apply it to every place that's cut and exposed. So inside all of these cuts and then the whole inside of the pumpkin. And this will prevent it from drying out.
Also probably prevents air from hitting it too, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you won't get as much mold. Personally, I have to move this pumpkin around, especially my big ones, and I end up with Vaseline all over myself. I don't. Plus, it's a nuisance to get into all the spots. So you need a Q-tip to get into all the little cuts you made.
Right.
It's what we use is a mixture of bleach and water, like 1 part bleach to 10 parts water in a spray bottle. And we'll go out every day or every other day, and we'll spray all those same areas I mentioned, all the cut areas and the inside of the pumpkin. And what this does, the water keeps it from drying out, which is the same thing the Vaseline does, but water's water.
Right.
And the bleach will keep it from getting mildewy and moldy, which the Vaseline will do too. The bleach has a nice side effect that the animals don't really care for bleach. If you have a lot of squirrels in your neighborhood, a mixture of water and cayenne pepper sprayed on the pumpkin. The water will help keep it from drying out, but won't do anything to keep the mildew and mold away. The cayenne pepper will keep the squirrels from eating it. They really don't like the heat.
That's a great tip. One of the things I wondered is there a way that you can show us relatively easily how to create what you would do, like the gray areas in your pattern, to scrape away so that it doesn't go all the way through?
Sure. Let me see. What I would do, give me a second. I've got it buried under. Actually, does my daughter have a set of? My daughter is also a pumpkin carver, and I've got her toolbox here next to mine. Yes, she has what I need. Oh, good. What we would do to scrape a section is I start off with a V-shaped cutter. It's just, I mean, it's called that because the blade is shaped like a V. And so what I would do is I would take that V-shaped cutter and I'd follow the lines. And you can see I'm just taking off the surface. I use this a lot in my carvings.
Have you ever heard of cutting the bottom of the pumpkin instead of the top stem makes it last longer?
Yes, it does. The stem will continue to provide nutrients to the pumpkin. And so that does help. It won't stop it from rotting. It will stop it a bit from drying out. But it's not that big of a difference but I have heard that before. Then we use a loop. This is used frequently in clay products. There's this linoleum loops also. And you come through and you scrape out what was left in between the V-shaped cut and the rest of the area you want done. And so it cuts very easily. And so now when I light this up, this will be shaded similar. These cuts here were all done with a V-shaped cutter. I didn't need the loop because that's all I was doing was some shading. When I'm doing trees, I like to put the bark of the tree in with the V cutter. I was doing squirrels today, and I wanted them to have a nice bushy tail. So I was taking the V cutter and going through.
So one quick question, Mark, about the V cutter and the loop that you mentioned. Those don't come in the Master Carver kits, right? You have to get those separately.
Some of the Master Carvers kits do carry them. Less and less every year. I'm having troubles. My favorite V cutter is one that came in a Pumpkin Masters kit, and they don't make it anymore. Which is terrible because I think mine's getting dull and I don't know how to sharpen it.
Yeah.
The loops, they do sell. Let's see if I have one here.
So someone's claiming that they are just bad at carving and asking if you have any tips for people who can't carve. Is there anything that you can recommend? I know for me, like, I'm just probably not patient enough.
I love it when I've never considered myself a patient man. But here I am telling you, when you cut, let the knife do the work. Impatient people have troubles with that.
Right.
But you learn to trust your tools. And believe me, I didn't become a professional pumpkin carver overnight. There was a lot of anger and
smash pumpkins, maybe.
I've ruined a couple of pumpkins in my early days. I don't do it much anymore. It's part of the learning process. I wish I could tell you, oh, you just follow these steps and you'll magically be as good. No.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's perfect, right?
I've been doing this for 25, 26 years.
Wow.
I've been doing this as a professional for the last 15, 20 years. And it's gotten easier. I've gotten faster. I've gotten better. You begin to learn, sort of like today. I was doing leaves. I was scraping out leaves. And so I was taking the V cutter, and I learned that if I wiggle it as I'm moving it along, I can get that ruffle at the edge of the leaf just right. And so learning to use the tools. Until you try it, you'll never understand how to get it done. I can't tell you, well, you just shake it like this and it does it. No, you've got to do that. So it's a matter of learning. It's a matter of trial and I failed a number of times.
Trial and error, like practice makes perfect. All those things.
Yeah, I hate to say that, but I can teach you the basics. If you really want to learn a lot about becoming a better pumpkin carver, what I would suggest is going to www.stoneykins.com. That's STONEYKINS.com. And Stony, we call him Stony. I don't know the guy's real name. Everyone calls him Stony. Stony has a set of videos that he's collected over the years. They're not all his. Yes, that's the one.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the videos will walk you through step by step things like I don't use the poke method anymore. It's very unusual for me to go and do it this way. I use Surreal transfer paper. I tape it behind the transfer, like this. And if you look on the back side, you can see where I drew. Although I'm over there. Where I drew on the front, and that became what was on the pumpkin. And we use a fixative. That stuff will wipe right off. So we use a matte fixative. We like Blick. Blick is a good company for art supplies. A lot of the advanced tools that I use come from Blick for other types of crafts. But spray that on. Open the doors when you do it. Take the pumpkin outside. The stuff stinks. But it will keep the pattern from rubbing off while you're working. There's nothing more frustrating to find out that you wiped off part of the pattern with the heel of your hand.
One request we're having is could you do a close-up of the V cutter and the loop so we can see what that looks up close?
Okay. Let's see. The V cut, I've never known how to, you can see the V in there?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. And then the loop is just a metal, oh, that's a better shot of it. A metal loop at the end of a handle. And
you got a blade on it, so you can use it to scrape with, right? That's how it works.
Yeah, it's got a little thickness to it.
Uh-huh.
So, and as I said, the ones for linoleum and for clay are a bit hardier than the ones for pumpkins.
Uh-huh.
But if you've got a nice pumpkin, a good soft skinned pumpkin, this will do the job. That's what I normally use. These to me, usually they're too big. They don't give me the level of detail that I want on the pumpkins.
Right.
But then I'm doing a lot of detail work. If you've gone to my website, www.pumpkincarver.com, you'll see the amount of detail that I throw into my pumpkins. Some of them get really, really down into small details, and that's not going to cut it.
Right.
So that's why I go with the smaller ones. If I am doing bigger areas, there's another tool that I use that looks like a staple stuck into the side of a piece of plastic.
Uh-huh.
I stick the piece of plastic on the pumpkin and I slide across, and the staple cuts so wide across, so deep, a nice, even, smooth surface, so that if I'm doing the shading, that will give me a nice, even shaded area without the grooves. The V cutter will leave little V's, which if you're doing hair is gorgeous.
Right. Right.
If you're doing a flat surface, so
Right.
you want to take the scraper and scrape it smooth. This side of the scraper is probably better for that.
Okay.
Because it's got the nice flat area, and you just run it down the side of the pumpkin, and it will take out a little curl of the pumpkin meat and make it all nice and smooth underneath.
It's almost like a potato peeler kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. It's the blade's not as sharp as a potato peeler.
Uh-huh.
It really doesn't. I mean, I don't think these actually have a blade to them. They're just a thin piece of metal.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, I don't think that's gonna cut your hand. But you run it across the soft of the inside of the pumpkin, it'll smooth it out nicely.
Right.
So.
Well,
you were about to say? I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
One comment is just to clarify that you actually do prefer cutting the bottom of the pumpkin and using the top as a chimney, right?
Well, again, I cut the bottom of the pumpkin. If the pumpkin sits better on its top than on its bottom, some of the bigger pumpkins, they really do sit better on. I'll cut the top of the pumpkin and then flip the pumpkin over and carve it that way.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I'm usually taking whatever parts that's going to be on the ground. That's where I'm going to cut the hole to scrape it out, because I want to put the light in from the bottom.
Right.
I don't like using candles. They dry the pumpkin out prematurely. An LED bulb doesn't generate quite as much heat. They're brighter. They'll show up better. And the pumpkin will last longer.
That makes sense. And I'm sorry if you mentioned it, but where can you get the scrapers and the V cutters? Like a hardware store, would they have them, or?
Well, any art supply store will have them.
Uh-huh.
Some hardware stores will have them. You want linoleum cutters.
So linoleum cutters is what your bigger one is what you're saying.
Yes. Well, I'm trying to remember whether this is linoleum or, on the other hand, Kemper tools. Most of the tools I use can be found on the Stoneykin site.
Okay.
He sells the tools. He sells the patterns. I love his patterns. They go everywhere from very simple to well beyond complex. And there's a group on Facebook of pumpkin carvers, the pumpkin carving group. It's invite only. You got to get Stonykins to invite you in. And we take novices to advanced carvers. Some of them make my designs look simple. Some of them are just starting out. And so it's a good broad range. We try to help each other out. We have conversations about, do you cut the bottom or do you cut the top? That's why I knew the stem will keep on giving you nutrients to the rest of it.
Right.
It's where I learned it. So the Vaseline I had heard from, actually I heard from before that group, but so there's a lot of really good, if you look for them, websites that will discuss this, but Stonykins to me is probably the best one. It's been my saving grace for so many things, and so I give back a lot to that group because it's done really good by me.
That's fantastic. So everybody, the website for Stonykins is up here on the screen. And then if you're wanting to visit Mark's website as well, it's the www.pumpkincarver.com. I have that right there. Is that your site, Mark?
Trying to remember whether it's .com or .net. Give me one second.
Pumpkincarver.com or .net, and you can visit his site there.
Okay, I'm screwed up. It's .net.
.net. Let me fix that real quick.
Usually I just have to look at my sweatshirt because it says it, but I'm not wearing a sweatshirt tonight.
You know, first rule is you should know your website address. Everyone in the comments is really grateful for you sharing your knowledge with us. This was super enjoyable, and I learned a lot. And thank you so very much. And we hope that you have a happy Halloween, and maybe we'll see you next year.
I'll be thrilled.
Thank you so very much. Have a great evening. Happy Halloween, everybody. Be safe.
Halloween.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.